Stefanos and I were neighbors, and we used to walk by each other for about a year, almost every day. And he's impossible to miss. He looks a lot like Hercules, and he was very rarely wearing shoes. And he would just nod and smile, and I would do the same. And one day I was in the gym, boxing gym in Hollywood, and Stefanos comes in and walks up and says, "What are you doing here?" He later told me that little girls didn't belong in serious boxing gyms, and that's why he was surprised. But we became fast friends after that, and we remained very good friends over the last 15 years. We started training together every day, and Stefanos loved good food, and he loved to go out, and so we had a lot of fun. We'd train during the day and go out at night, and you never felt more safe than when you were with Stefanos. And you could go anywhere, and Stefanos was like a living legend. And anywhere you went, you would hear the, Stefanos, and then we would be shuttled to the front of the line, and in we would go. My first impression of Stefanos was that he looked like Hercules. It was just unbelievable. I had never seen anyone look like him or carry themselves like him. He was regal and just like a real warrior. And you could see it in his presence, just surrounded him. He just had this calm nature about him, and he was always such a gentleman. Everything was different about Stefanos. I used to say they broke the mold when they made him. I've never met anyone like Stefanos. He had a great sense of humor, and he was so intelligent. And by looking at his exterior, you think, oh, he's a fighter, he's a real tough guy. And then you start talking to him, and he was such a philosopher. Everything, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. He knew everything about Greek philosophers. And the thing that used to crack me up is, you have this giant Stefanos, and this little 10-pound white fluffy dog would go walking by, and every dog and every child always came up to Stefanos. And these little dogs would come running up to Stefanos, wagging their tail, and he'd lean down and, start talking to them in this, little soft, gentle baby voice. And it was so cute to see him interact with these small creatures. Well, I have a very funny Stefanos story. So, my cat, he picked up a mouse outside, and he brought the mouse in. It was about 2 in the morning, and he brought it in and dropped it. And so the mouse was running around the house, and I jump up on the couch, and I'm hysterical, and call Stefanos, and he comes down. He was there in under a minute. He finds the mouse, picks it up, carries it outside, and then he comes back in and says, "I'm going to tell all of your clients what a sissy you are. Look at you on your couch screaming like a little girl." So there were many more incidents that Stefanos came down in the middle of the night to help me. He was always the first person to respond in the middle of the night. It didn't matter what time it was. I always said my car could have broke down in Arizona, and Stefanos would have gotten his car and come out and saved me. Well, there's so many stories about Stefanos because I feel like every time I was out with him, there was always a story attached to it. It was never boring, If we went to dinner, a boyfriend would be talking down to his girlfriend, or maybe being a little rough with her, and Stefanos was always right there to intervene. And he'd say to me, "Well, I feel like this is one of my purposes in life, that everywhere I go, it's like the Creator places me there so that I can help with these situations and dissolve them." So it's hard to pick one story about Stefanos when there are so many. when I first met him, I didn't know anything except that he was a fighter. He never shared anything about his movie experience until much later. And we were in his apartment and going through his pictures, and all of a sudden I'm finding all of, wait, what's this? You know, Jean-Claude Van Damme and, you know, all of these movies. So with Stefanos, he never really shared a lot about himself. He was happy to if you asked him pointed questions, but as far as just, you know, a stream of consciousness, you didn't get that very often. He was more interested in talking about politics and philosophy and sports and LeBron James coming to the Lakers and being a disappointment. So there wasn't a lot of talking about Stefanos and all of his accolades. You know, he talked a lot about his family. About his mom and his sister all the time, about what great women they were and how they were so strong and how he feels like he got his strength from his mom. And so it was always a beautiful thing to hear his stories from Greece and his mom and how she raised him, and his sister was his best friend, and you know, they talked every day. And so it was more about family, politics, and sports than himself, for sure. Stefanos in a sentence. That's tough. I'm sure people have been having a hard time with that. I would say Stefanos was a true warrior. He had a heart of gold and the strength of 10 men. I would just be warrior, for sure. And one word is Stefanos was a warrior in every sense of the word. And if I got 2 words, I would say an honorable warrior. Well, Opie called me in the morning at 8 a.m. and she said that she hadn't heard from him and asked if I could come down and check on him. So I changed my clothes and I came down, and when I got here, Johnny and the paramedics were standing outside. And I tried to go in, but they didn't let me. So I just took our usual walk that I took so many times with him down to Venice and back. And when I came back and talked to the paramedics, they told me he didn't suffer. He was in his bed, and he still had the blanket on him. That means there was no struggle. He went to sleep, and it just made me think that, you know, he died like he lived. An honorable warrior. I've had several dreams. You know, it was very hard in the beginning. And Stefanos, he would appear in my dreams in a gold cloth with a stick. And he would say, "It's okay. I have my strength back." And then when I didn't accept that answer, I had another dream. And in the dream, his mom and Opie, his sister, and I were in his apartment, and we were taking care of him, and we were giving him a bath and helping him get changed. And then he told me that he would have never wanted that, and that he's happy now, and he has his strength back. And so it helped a lot to accept the shocking and devastating blow that it was. Understanding Stefanos And anybody who knew him would know that that would be the case. He would be so happy to have his strength back. When he got out of the hospital the first time, and his mom and sister were here, and he was sitting down on a bench with them out in front of the apartment, and there was a guy who was wasted and acting up and screaming and being a maniac. And Stefanos told me it was the first time in his life that he realized there was nothing that he could probably do about it. I comforted him and told him, Stefanos, I'm sure there was still something you could do about it, even if you just got out of the hospital and still have stitches. But to him, it was such a blow to realize that something that had been with him his entire life. You know, I hear stories from his mom when he was a child, and how freakishly strong he was his whole life. And so I have some comfort in knowing that he has his strength back, and he's hopefully with the men he admired so much, Socrates, Plato. Well, if I could have a conversation with Stefanos right now, I would definitely tell him how much I love him and how much I miss him. And then ultimately the conversation would probably come back to philosophy, Socrates and Plato, and the Creator, and that the Creator has a vision for everybody, and nobody can interfere with that vision, and the Creator knows exactly what's supposed to happen at all times, and you just have to trust that whatever has happened was meant to happen the way it did.